Hi, and welcome to this introduction to ProKey 4, the latest iteration of FabFilter's famous EQ plugin. Let's start with the interface changes. We now get a little ghost preview of the type of band we'll get when we click. This will be a high-pass filter over to the bottom left, or a low shelf a bit further up, or a bell in the mid-range. If I click, and then hold it and drag, I can continue to add more bands and quickly sketch in a good starting point for the channel. Freehand drawing EQ curves isn't a new idea. People tried it back in the day, then quickly discarded it as unworkable, a bit like freehand drawing compressor transfer curves. But in this case, my rough sketch is translated into a sensible number of conventional EQ bands that I can edit in the usual way. Of course, you can have another go if your first attempt isn't good. Click the EQ sketch button at the bottom left to discard your current settings and sketch in a new approach. Or you can pause mid-sketch, retrace your steps, and go a different direction. Incidentally, if I hover over this high-pass filter, I can change the slope with my mouse wheel. That's not new. The new part is that if I hold Shift while I do it, the parameter becomes continuous, so you can get the in-between slopes if you really need them. The panel parameter reflects the fact that most of the time you won't need them. You can just click directly on 18 dB per octave, for example, if that's what you need. But you can also drag in between increments or double-click to type in a specific number. And this will also work with the bells and the shelves. Okay, here's another new feature. Notice the track name is displayed on this button at the bottom. If I press this, I can access every other instance of Q4 in the project. I can scroll the list with my mouse wheel, zoom in or out by holding a modifier or with the slider at the top. Select an instance to enlarge it. There's a pretty cool auto zoom feature which allows you to shuffle through your instances like a deck of cards. And you can still adjust the overall zoom level. When you have a mix full of instances, like I do here, you'll see them listed over to the right in the mini-map, which you can hide or show with the button above. There's also a search field at the top, or you can start typing to get a list of tracks you can quick jump to. If you prefer, you can set it so that typing will start a search instead. These names were pulled automatically from the DAW's track names, in case you needed another good reason to name your tracks sensibly. But you can rename instances by double-clicking their name, for example if you have two instances on the same channel, like this. These instances are also listed in the correct channel order, by the way, with colours matching those that I've assigned in Reaper. That's important to me, as I always use the same system for both when I mix. At the moment, that's only available in the VST3 version, however, in DAWs that support it. The FabFilter team are working with the relevant developers to bring colours and channel orders to the AAX and AU versions as well. Meanwhile, everything else will work fine and the instances will be ordered by name instead. For those of us with colour support, you can open the menu to the right of an instance and choose to pin all instances with the same colour. These all get a pinned symbol in the list to the right, and if I click the Filter Pinned button at the top, I can filter the list to show only those instances. You can even save pinned sets. Here's one with just my buses visible. You can manually pin instances using the button at the top left. Just to the right, and artfully hidden until you hover over it, is the collision detection feature. Turn this on to set that instance as the collision reference and make other instances glow red at frequencies that might be masking content in that channel. The collision detection feature arguably becomes way more useful when you can see multiple instances like this, and still works even when you're zoomed right out. So anyway, some of you already know that I'm old enough to have learnt to mix on analog consoles, and initially I found the transition to digital quite traumatic. Because a picture of some analog pots that you can only adjust one at a time with a mouse, with no tactile feedback, in no way recreates the feeling of mixing on an analog board. I switched to using FabFilter EQ because the ability to control frequency and gain at the same time, with Q right there on my mouse wheel, along with all the other FabFilter ergonomic refinements, got me back to that feeling of being in control that I missed about mixing on an analog console that I knew really well. These days I'm very happy mixing in the box, and I'm convinced I get better results than I would with a console. But there is one area where an analog console still has the edge. Having all your parameters laid out at once is a big advantage at the early stages of a mix. Maybe you'll be able to dial in a good starting point during the first playthrough of the song. The EQ sketch and instance list features are both attempts to address this aspect of your workflow. Yes, you can now see all your EQs at once and sketch in your initial starting point settings. And then when you start to focus on the little details, you can filter your list to focus on just the relevant instances. Another difference between analog and digital mixing is that analog gives you a little bit of saturation for free, while digital is clean by default and you have to deliberately add those harmonics. Pro Key 4 provides 2 new character modes on the bottom bar. Subtle adds a whole set of harmonics, which nevertheless remain pretty subtle unless you drive it really hard. While Warm gives you a single, consistent, sweet-sounding second harmonic. The harmonics added will change depending on your EQ settings, so my graphs don't tell the full picture. This is best judged by ear. These are oversampled and work in combination with any of the processing modes over to the left, so you can indeed have colourful linear phase EQ if you want. Of course, you still need to consciously enable these settings, unless of course you pick your favourite flavour, then save that as your default preset. And now you have a little bit of colour by default, like an analog console. Unlike an analog console, however, you'll probably never run out of bands. And if you're struggling to find one good gain setting, you can make a band dynamic. As before, everything is handled automatically by default, but you can opt to set a manual threshold if you want. And now you also get attack and release controls. I remain of the opinion that when dealing with a very narrow range of frequencies like this, what you really want is just transparency and minimal artifacts. So a clever automatic algorithm is more helpful than having to dial in suitable settings manually. Luckily, these dynamics are just as clever and automatic as ever, now also with reduced distortion. And the attack and release controls just nudge the algorithm towards faster or slower settings, rather than overriding the program dependency. Let's hit the drum bus hard, with a high shelf set to cover the whole spectrum. So this is basically just compression, and is a good way to hear the dynamic behaviour. The attack can go really fast and grabby. Or you can back it off and get a powerful, punchy attack. The release really brings out the room with the fastest setting. Or you can make it slower and groovier instead. I'm not suggesting you delete all your compressor plugins and just use this instead, but a low and high shelf setting like this one on bass guitar is absolutely a valid alternative to a multi-band compressor. And the attack and release controls are definitely useful in this case. I can set the low band with a slower release to avoid the part feeling congested, but set the high band to release faster and bring up the detail and definition. There's more though. Here's a flat-topped band covering the mid-range of that lovely Rhodes piano part. I'll dial in some compression, and then press this new spectral button. And that single band turns into a region of FFT magic instead. Now we're suppressing resonances within that band, rather than just compressing the whole thing. We can do that with an automatic floating threshold like this, or we can set the threshold manually by dragging the threshold slider down. And either way, we can adjust the attack and release behaviour as before. We can also adjust the spectral density slider, drag this left for wider, gentler cuts, or right to get really tight and surgical. A side note, FFT magic like this means that the band is now effectively running in linear phase mode, regardless of your setting at the bottom. Your other bands won't change and will still run in the selected mode. But of course the plugin will now have linear phase style latency, which will depend on the resolution you've selected. Note that the two highest settings here don't support dynamic behaviour, but the medium setting will be fine in most cases. Anyway, this option has a range of possible uses. The most obvious is probably as a problem solver. If you have a tricky part with multiple bad-sounding resonances at different frequencies, try covering that region with a spectral band. You can hold Alt plus Shift while double-clicking in a band to add a spectral band directly. This option can be somewhere between a massive time saver or a complete lifesaver when faced with a suitably problematic signal, but I would also slap a health warning on it. If used lazily or inappropriately, this kind of processing would be absolutely capable of suppressing all the character and life in your part by turning down the harmonics that make it what it is, with great power, etc., etc. Anyway, maybe you try a high shelf boost and it sounds sweet, except a few frequencies start to jump out distractingly. Maybe a touch of spectral dynamics would help to soften it a little, and maybe allow you to boost a bit further than you otherwise could. Here's my favourite application, however. You're not limited to suppressing resonances with compression. You can also exaggerate them with expansion. Just as you can use this feature inappropriately to reduce the natural characteristics of a part, you can use it inappropriately to exaggerate the natural characteristics of a part. Listen to those crazy vowel sounds that were hiding in that Rhodes part all along. If you're thinking this has some interesting sound design applications, consider that you can actually drive the spectral processing from the sidechain inputs, which means you can turn this EQ plugin into a vocoder. Yes, really, I'm not doing any other trickery. This is raw chords from Twin 3 processed through this instance of Q4, with the only extra step being a gate to clean up the tiny bit of carrier signal that bleeds through when there's no modulator present. I'm using two bands just so that I can set different thresholds for the low and high frequencies, which gave me slightly nicer results. Okay, that's all. Thanks for watching.